screwing the people they were elected to represent. And this actually happened.
What purpose does the gentleman from Maryland rise?
Mr. Speaker, pursuant to Clause 4 of Rule 22, I move that the House take from the Speaker's table the Senate amendment to the House Joint Resolution 59, recede from its amendment, and concur in the Senate amendment to open the government now.
Under Section 2 of House Resolution 368, that motion may be offered only by the Majority Leader or his designee.
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr.
The gentleman
Speaker.
may state his parliamentary inquiry.
The standing rule of the House is Rule 22, Clause 4. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And the standing rule of the House reads, Mr. Speaker, when the stage of disagreement has been reached on a bill or a resolution with House or Senate amendments, a motion to dispose of any amendment shall be privileged. Mr. Speaker, my question is this parliamentary status of the bill, does it meet the requirements of 22.4?
The House has altered that operation of that standing rule.
So I just want to understand, Mr. Speaker, this standing rule of the House, which I have here, has been altered by the House. Is that what the Speaker's saying?
The House adopted a resolution altering.
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker. When was that alteration made?
House Resolution 368.
House Resolution 368. Mr. Speaker, just parliamentary inquiry. I want to make sure I have the right one. I have in my hand H.Res. 368, October 1st, resolved, and Section 2 of that says any motion pursuant to Clause 4 of Rule 22 relating to the House joint resolution may be offered only by the Majority Leader or his designee. Is that what you're referring to, Mr. Speaker?
That is the resolution.
So, Mr. Speaker, just so I understand the situation, parliamentary inquiry, H.Res. 368 changed the standing rules of the House to take away from any member of the House the privilege of calling up the Senate bill to immediately reopen the government. Is that right?
It did change the operation of the standing rule.
Right. So just parliamentary inquiry, a privileged motion, Mr. Speaker, would have allowed any member of this House, Republican or Democrat, to call up the Senate bill to open the government. Is that right?
The chair did not give an advisory opinion on that.
But, Mr. Speaker, a privileged resolution, as cited in Rule 22.4, the standing rules of the House, would allow any member of the House to offer that resolution. Is that right?
The chair will not give an advisory opinion.
Well, Mr. Speaker, parliamentary inquiry. I think you, just as I understood, said that was changed so that it no longer would be a privileged motion for any member, but it would be exclusively the right of the Republican leader or his designee. Am I right about that?
The House will follow House Resolution 368.
Right. And just again, Mr. Speaker, I want to be absolutely clear that H.Res. 368 changed the standing rules of the House so that only the Republican leader or his designee could call to open the government.
The gentleman will state his parliamentary inquiry.
Parliamentary inquiry. Parliamentary inquiry. Is the Majority Leader or his designee? I would ask my colleagues whether the Majority Leader or his designee is on the floor of the House today.
The gentleman will address
parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Speaker. This rule,
the chair
which
is
amended my parliamentary inquiry, and this will be my last one. I just want to understand, Mr. Speaker. The Rules Committee, under the rules of the House, changed the standing rules of the House to take away the right of any member to move to vote to open the government, and gave that right exclusively to the Republican leader. Is that right?
The House adopted that resolution.
The
chair is now prepared to entertain 1 minute.
I make my motion, Mr. Speaker. I renew my motion that under the regular standing rules of the House, Clause 4, Rule 22, that the House take up the Senate amendments and open the government now.
Under Section 2 of House Resolution 368, that motion may be offered only by the majority leader or his designate.
Mr. Speaker, why were the rules rigged to keep the government shut down?
The gentleman will suspend.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I think
the chair will now entertain.
Democracy has been suspended.
The gentleman will suspend.
This is our federal government undermining the voice of the people. And I commend those who stood up for democracy and trying to derail the derailment. How in the hell can anyone support the Republican Party in this day and age? How can you call yourself an American? How can you call yourself a patriotic American, especially after hearing that? I admit the Democrats have not been saints. But how can you support this party? If this had been another country, we'd be in a revolution right about now. Instead, we're just cowering down like sheep. Now, I'm not advocating an armed revolt. But we're 13 months away from another major election in this country, the midterm elections. And I think it's time we vote every single one of those people out of office that's up for re-election. Or to strongly ask, why didn't you intervene? Why did you keep your mouth shut? Why did we allow democracy to go offline? Because a bunch of rich people want to make a profit? Or are afraid of losing money? Now, I'm not against free enterprise. But I am against people undermining a system that was designed to protect everybody. Has America always been a saint? No. But I thought we were getting better. But it's the same old story all over again. A minority running the majority. And the majority of the people are pissed off, but they're pissed off at the wrong people. Well, you heard it right here on this program, folks. Democracy being swept right under our feet. And you still have people out there that believe the Republicans are saints in this. That is clear-cut proof that they wanted this shut down. That they'll do anything to make President Obama look bad. But all they're doing is throwing egg back on their own faces. I cannot understand this. And another thing I cannot understand is this growing bigotry in this country. I mean, it's always been there, but it has resurfaced a lot in the last 4 or 5 years since President Obama first took office. That he's been compared to everything, to Hitler, to a dictator, to the Antichrist, all this name calling. And another thing that I've seen a lot of posts of recently is of a billboard. Now, I've not seen this billboard personally, but I'm pretty sure they're around Missouri because Missouri's mentioned in it. What it says is, consider a contiguous 5-state secession. Texas, Louisiana, Missouri, Michigan, and Oklahoma. There's only one problem with that. Only 4 of those states are contiguous. Can you guess which one isn't? It's Michigan. Michigan is nowhere near close to Missouri. You know, what are the pros, what are the cons? Well, first of all, various states tried to secede from the Union 153 years ago. That failed. And I don't believe secession is the answer. I mean, you're going to have a lot of splintered countries off, namely smaller states, similar to the Confederacy. That didn't work too well the last time. We're interdependent. We need the federal government. There was a time that I probably would have been more in favor of a decentralized form of government because a centralized government has a tendency to ignore the outer fringes of its territory. But thanks to our modern transportation system and communication system, there is no reason for that anymore. And there's no reason to fear that. But I do not believe secession is the answer. Now, it's worth noting that whoever is behind this effort, they appear to be unaware of the fact that Michigan is not contiguous to the other 4 states the billboard list. Nevertheless, the view expressed by the billboard is far from unheard of in American politics, especially after the outcome of the last November general election. Remember, within hours, even days after the tallies were completed, there were a number of states, especially Texas, saying, "Oh, we're going to secede from the Union because we don't like the outcome of this presidential election." Really? You're that afraid of one black man? Come on. That's what it is. If you say racism is dead in this country, you are got your head in the sand so far deep you can't even breathe. Now, I know there are people out there that don't like President Obama because of his politics, not because of his race. They don't have a problem with his race. But this happens every time President Obama's popularity goes up, whether on a positive level or on a negative level. The question about where he was born comes up, the question about his religious convictions, and then they drag his family into it. And almost every time is, he was born in Kenya. No, he was born in Hawaii. That's been verified. Do you really think the Democrats would take that kind of a risk and risk getting exposed? That is such a screwed up notion. I can't believe anybody would entertain that thought as being valid. It just boggles my mind. If you believe that, more power to you. But do you really think the Democrats would take that kind of risk knowing that they would lose? If that were the case, President Obama would have been thrown out of office within less than a year of his first term. Well, that didn't happen. He sure as hell wouldn't have stood a chance at re-election a year ago. So you can throw that notion out. And then this thing about him being a Muslim. What is this? Once a Muslim, always a Muslim? In that case, I'm still a Christian. Well, there are tenets of Christianity that I still abide by. You know, I think Jesus was a fairly good role model. Whether or not he existed, well, I'm not convinced of it. I think he was a hodgepodge of several historical figures. You know, if you take out the supernatural elements out of Christianity, I think it's a pretty good way of life. I just have a hard time buying into believing that a 2,000-year-old zombie is going to come back to judge the living and the dead for the deeds they did or didn't do. And I heard somewhere along the way that speculation was that heaven only had room for 2 million souls. So chances are, even if you're a good Christian, heaven has already reached its quota. I didn't know non-corporeal entities could take up so much space, but I guess that's possible. And then on top of the drag President Obama's family into this, the kids have largely been left alone, which is the way it should be. But Michelle Obama gets slammed around in the press a lot, especially for this Healthy Kids initiative, which I think is a great program. It reminds me of a program back in my elementary school in second grade. I don't know if they still do it. But one of the things that taught us about nutrition was we had 2 gerbils in the class. And for a month, one was fed healthy foods, like fruits, nuts, things that are healthy, while another gerbil was fed nothing but junk food. And in just a month's time, the weight of the unhealthy gerbil increased by 50% or more. It was lethargic, it was fat, and it died prematurely. That lesson has stuck with me, and I wish I had abided more by that over the years. But when you're young, you think you're invincible, think, oh, this won't hurt me. But everything you consume becomes a part of you. That is through food, through thought, through action and inaction. And eventually things become a way of life. The more you justify something wrong, the more it becomes a part of you. Well, getting back to this ridiculous sign, seems that a poll taken last December found that 25% of registered Republicans want their state to secede from the United States. 25%. That is a scary number. I would be scared at 1%, but 25 makes me want to crap my pants right now. It really does.